Good evening and welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint Netcast number 172, recorded live on Monday, October 7th, 2013. I am your host and former Monday Night Football color commentator, Todd Klindt. All of this would not be possible. All of these crazy things going on, the windows flashing, the flags, the monitors, all that stuff would not be possible if it wasn't for the support from my friends and employers at Rackspace. You can go to sharepoint.rackspace.com and find out about all the great things that we do when it comes to SharePoint at Rackspace. We've got training, free stuff, not free stuff, consulting, hosting, the whole everything. You can't miss it. So go to sharepoint.rackspace.com, sign up for free stuff, watch free stuff. You'll love every minute of it. And it's fast. It's running on SharePoint. These downloads that you're getting, they're running off of Rackspace. It's a Rackspace world. I'm just working in it. Now we'll go on to production notes, and I see I've had my production notes slide up the whole time. So let's pretend for a second that my Surface was cooperating, and it started out on that one. So we'll look at that. There's one. Yep, there we go. All right, so now we're on production notes. There was no Netcast last week. I will talk about that in a minute. So if you or think you're behind and all that kind of stuff, you're not. We didn't do it last week. And but to make up for it, I screwed up the blog post for 2 weeks ago's 171. I had an apostrophe in the link, and that worked fine for HTTP stuff, but when I published the RSS feed, it didn't work for that, so I had to go through and rename some stuff. I forgot some stuff, but that should be all good now, so RSS feed should be good, the blog post should be live, 171 should be ready and willing for you. Also, if you're impatient, the best place to get the fresh netcasts as they go out is YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/Todd Klindt Netcast, and you will find them there. Probably going to get there first because it's just the easiest place for me to upload them because they do all the stuff themselves. So that's a good place to check. But then you can also get them at toddklindt.com/blog. And I'm going to be changing toddklindt.com/netcast and putting some links and stuff in there too to make it easier to download. So now on to some topics. The first topic that I wanted to talk about is something that I've known was going on here for a month or so. I was very excited about this, but I couldn't really talk a whole lot about it. But my friend Ed Wilson and his lovely wife Teresa Wilson at Hey Scripting Guy, Ed contacted me a month or so ago. He's writing another PowerShell book, and he wanted various people. He had various people that he knew that he asked us to write little sidebars for the book, and I was honored to be in that group. I could hardly believe it. So the scripting guy talked to me, Ed, a month or so ago, and said, would you write this sidebar for my book? And I said, I would love to have anything to do with your book. I would love to sweep the warehouse that they store your book in. I would love to do any of that. And he said, that's not necessary, but write me a sidebar and just about anything PowerShell. And I didn't really know what to write, but I just kind of wrote about how I got into PowerShell and how I was my transformation from hating PowerShell into loving PowerShell. And it was one of those things, if any of you have ever met me in person, I suffer from this issue where I start talking and I can't shut up. Well, this sidebar that I was writing for Ed turned out the same way. I started writing and I just couldn't stop. And like 1,000 words later, 1,200 words later, something like that, I got done and I sent it off to Ed. And Ed is an incredibly nice and polite guy. He emailed me back and he said, that is great. I love what you sent me. I was looking for something more along the lines of like 200 words. He said, but I tell you what, he said, if you can write me a short version of this, I will take this long, wordy version, I will publish it on my blog, the Hey Scripting Guy blog. And I said, wow, that would be crazy. Sure, you can absolutely do that. So that is the thing that he published over the weekend. He published it yesterday. And it's just kind of the story of how I reluctantly fell in love with PowerShell, and just kind of some good life lessons there and just good stuff. So jump over to the Hey Scripting Guy blog. You can get that at blogs.technet.com/b /HeyScriptingGuy. There's comments at the bottom. There's already a couple of comments there, so that's great. Feel free to leave some comments there. Tell Ed what you think about my blog post. Tell me what you think about it. And if it doesn't suck, or if you guys don't hate it, I'm going to try to get him to publish some other stuff that I've got. I've got a couple of other PowerShell blog posts, either written or in various stages of being written, and I'm going to see if I can get him to put one of those up there. So thanks to Ed and Teresa, great people. If you're ever at Tech Ed or any kind of events like that, by all means, stop by the Hey Scripting Guy booth. They will make you feel like family the moment you walk up there. They are great people, and of course, they like to talk about PowerShell, and PowerShell is an awful lot of fun too. So I'm very excited about that. The Hey Scripting Guy blog is one that I've been reading for, I don't know, a decade maybe, and so it's pretty exciting. Pretty exciting to have something posted there. So again, thanks very much to them. Another great opportunity I had, and the reason that I wasn't here last week is because I was in Stockholm, Sweden, speaking at the SharePoint Exchange Forum 2013, also known as SEF. That's what they call it. And Joran Huisman, a friend of mine, is the organizer for that event. This was the 10th one in a row that he has done, and Joran always puts on a tremendous event. And not only does Joran put on a great event, but Joran is an incredibly proud Swede. He's incredibly proud of Sweden and of Stockholm. And when non-Swedes come speak, he always just embraces us with open arms and just does everything he can to make us feel at home and love his town. And so every year he does a tour of something in Stockholm. And this year, and you're going to laugh, the special event that he took all of us non-natives on was a tour of the ABBA Museum. And whoever's Nick in the chat room is Todd is a dev. You are banned for life, just so you know. I can look up your information. I can see where you're coming from. And so he took us all to the ABBA Museum, and it was a blast. So I was born in 74. ABBA was active. I know this now because of the museum, from 72 to 82. But their music, it's timeless, right? I mean, we've all heard an ABBA song probably in the last 6 months. They've got Mamma Mia. They've got all that kind of stuff. And so now in the chat room, everybody's quoting their favorite ABBA songs. It was just a blast. And it's just this huge museum that's just nothing but dedicated to ABBA. And it was a lot of fun. I felt bad, though, because we got there towards the end of the afternoon on Sunday, and they absolutely had to kick us out because they were closing. I would have easily spent another hour there. And it was great. Joran put on a great show. My wife went over with me. He included her in the fun, so I got to take her with us. It was somebody in the chat room here is admitting to having a crush on Anna Fred. That's awesome. So it was just, for those of us, everybody in the United States has heard ABBA songs 1,000 times and loves them. Everybody loves it. And so that was just a lot of fun. And the great thing about that is that that's one of those things that if I were going to Stockholm on my own, I probably would not do. It was just not something I would think about. But it was just an absolute blast. And they had, when you come down the stairs in the first room that you go into, they have one of the big ABBA signs that had the lights on it with the B backwards that was lit up, and it was they had a bunch of the costumes that they wore over the years. It was amazing. It was a great time. So talk to Joran for all of that. That was a great time that I had there. Then the event itself, and this is just amazing. I am amazed that I was a part of such a great thing. This was the 10th anniversary of SEF, and so Joran wanted to do something crazy, and so he had the conference on a cruise ship, and so we boarded Stockholm Monday morning. And that's when the conference started, and the conference rooms were on the ship, and we were staying on the ship. And then Monday afternoon, at some point, the ship took off, and we started sailing across the Baltic Sea to Helsinki. We got there on Tuesday, and the conference went on while we were at port in Helsinki, and had a blast there. I was lucky that my session Tuesday was in the afternoon. so my wife and I got to go into Helsinki and hang out for a while, and while the conference was going on. And then, I got back on the ship, did a little prep for my session, and, we took off. We actually left port in the middle of my session, so I'm standing in my my session talking, and I was talking about PowerShell. That was the afternoon I was doing my PowerShell session. So I got the big screen behind me and a room full of people, and, out the window, it's just passing by, ships passing by. It's really from the Helsinki port. It was amazing. So Doug in the chat room is asking if the conference room had an open bar, or if the ship had an open bar. It was a regular cruise ship, so it had bars and all that. And so the person who's got the terrible nick in the chat room, I won't say it out loud. The alcohol taxes in Sweden are apparently pretty stiff. I personally don't drink, so I've never experienced them. But that's apparently what the whole purpose of this cruise is. As one of the Swedes told me, nobody in Sweden ever actually wants to go to Helsinki, but they get on the boat because of the alcohol is cheaper on the ship while they're going back and forth. So the whole purpose of the ship is not to get to Helsinki because nobody wants to go to Helsinki. It's to be on the boat. So it was a blast. So, but it didn't have an open bar, but Joran did give us all a bunch of drink tickets. So when we signed in, we got our name badges and all this stuff, and in our pouch there's a bunch of drink tickets. It was an absolute blast. It was amazing. Now I've seen there's sequel cruises and things like that, and I know Joel Olson looked at having some kind of a SharePoint conference on a cruise ship. So it's not a completely new idea, but it was just a blast to be on, especially, again, I'm doing a session, I'm trying to talk to people, I'm trying to type out PowerShell, and the ship's rocking. It was a lot of fun. And so the ship obviously had all kinds of things, so there were events at night, and we had big dinners and things like that, and it was just a blast. So had a great time there. Very, very fortunate to be involved in that. So, and I could gush all night for that, but nobody wants to hear that. So I did want to talk a little bit about my sessions that I did. I did 2 sessions for that. One of them that I did was on SharePoint installation, SharePoint 2013 installation. That's notable for a couple of things. Number one is that I've got a SharePoint 2010 installation guidance blog post, and I've been wanting to put a SharePoint 2013 version of that out. And I've kind of been holding back. Now we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of SharePoint 2013. Gosh, that's next week. Oh boy, we'll have to do a special Netcast next week for that. But I just felt like I didn't have the experience and haven't tried everything yet. So I've been holding off on doing that blog post. And at least one person in the chat room has been gently reminding me that I need to make that blog post happen. But the session that I did last week at SEF was kind of preparation for that, working through my process and going through my steps. And so that will help me get that blog post out once I'm confident that I'm qualified to put it out. But I did do something different with that session. Now, I discovered a few years ago that the session titles and abstracts have to have some kind of a hook to them. And so, like, the very first time I did this session, however long ago, I just called it, like, installing SharePoint 2010 correctly or something, and, like, nobody showed up. And afterwards, I was telling somebody else about it, and they're like, what was that session anyway? And I told them, and like, well, that session would be great, but the title was horrible. So then I renamed that session to how to install SharePoint without screwing it up. And that got, so now the room's packed. That happens. So I did this session 2 years ago at SEF with SharePoint 2010, and I was building SharePoint out, and I used PowerShell to create my farm, and I've got a blog post on that, toddklindt.com/createfarm, explains why I do that. Same thing in SharePoint 2010 and 2013. But as I started the PowerShell, my laptop overheated and killed all my demos. So I screwed up. So I was doing a session on how to install SharePoint without screwing up, and I screwed it up. So then last year, I did the session again on SharePoint 2013, how to install SharePoint 2013 without screwing it up. And this will come as a complete shock to anybody who's ever been to a session of mine. I actually practiced them, I rehearsed them, and I had done that, and I had set different snapshots in VMware. And then I got done practicing, working through it all. When I rolled my snapshots back, I rolled back to the wrong snapshot, got up on stage, big screen, room full of people, and I'm doing a session on how to install SharePoint without screwing it up, and didn't have SQL installed. So I couldn't do any demos. So I screwed it up again, 2 years running. Now, Joran is a saint, and so despite the fact that I screwed it up 2 years in a row, he let me do this session this year again. He's got more faith in me than I deserve. So so this year, I decided that instead of trying to do this and screwing it up for a third year in a row, I decided to pre-record all of my demos. Now, I've been going to conferences and speaking to conferences for a long time, and this whole pre-recording demos thing is nothing new. I wasn't breaking any ground with this, but I've always shied away from doing this for a couple of reasons. Number one, any of you that have been to my sessions know this. I play it all pretty fast and loose. So if people have questions about something we're not necessarily talking about, as long as it's a good discussion for the rest of the class, I'll go down that rabbit hole. Or especially when I'm doing my PowerShell sessions, I love getting in, just trying things, getting crowd interaction, all that stuff. So if I pre-record my demos, I lose all that. So I didn't want to lose that flexibility. But at least with the install one, it was all pretty solid, pretty straightforward. But the other thing was, every time I've gone to a session and the presenter had pre-recorded demos, I've never quite believed them. I've never quite trusted them. I've always kind of felt like there were shenanigans at play to get things done. I never really trusted it. But if I'm doing it live and they're watching me type and they're watching me misspell things and all that kind of stuff, they know I'm really doing it. But if they're just watching a video, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So I've never embraced recording my demos. But this time I did, because I just didn't want to screw this thing up 3 years in a row. And what I found was it worked pretty well. Now, for the installation, there's a bunch of parts where you're just waiting. You're waiting for SQL to do things. You're waiting for SharePoint to do things. And the great part about this recording these demos is I was able to shrink all those, this shouldn't take long, and the status bar building. I could take all that and compress it down in Camtasia and make the demos a little tighter. One of them, the initial recording started out at 22 minutes, and when I just took out all the pauses, it was down to like 8 minutes. So it was a good time. So and also the other thing is these sessions were only 60 minutes long. I don't know how many of you guys have ever installed SharePoint 2013. It takes a lot longer than 60 minutes to do that. As a matter of fact, after I did all my editing and all that kind of stuff, my demos alone were 57 minutes, and that's after shrinking them down. So the fact that I pre-recorded these demos allowed me to bring a specific video up and then jump to a middle spot, but then tell them you can download this video wherever. And so I think it worked pretty well, and again, it just gave me time to do more stuff. And I got some feedback from the audience. They seemed to believe that I'd actually done it. They didn't seem to mind. I did screw one part up when I was building some service apps. I screwed something up. I left it in the video to give it some credibility. So I may consider doing that in the future. The other thing that's great is if I pre-record my demos, then that allows me to just travel with my Surface. I don't have to travel with the lugging laptop. So I would love to hear people's feedback about that in the chat room, however, but it seems to go over pretty well. Now in the chat room, some folks are asking about what I use. I use Camtasia for everything. I use Camtasia to edit this thing that you're watching right now. I use Camtasia for all that. I don't know how much it costs. There's some questions in the chat room. I thought it was around $300, but I will be straightforward with you as an MVP. The folks at TechSmith give me a copy of Camtasia and Snagit for that matter, and so I've never paid for it. But I can tell you that if for whatever reason they discontinued that, I would absolutely pay for Camtasia for free, or pay for it for every year. And it's just great software. Does a lot of great things. So Camtasia is the thing that I use. You could probably use Windows Movie Maker or whatever. So all that. I can see in the chat room, people are kind of torn on the whole, recorded videos and all that. But it's good. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Camtasia. It worked out pretty well. So I think I might do that in the future for other things. It's just I don't know, it felt safer, it felt smoother, especially if I'm doing sessions on my own. Then I don't have to worry about trying to type and talk at the same time. I don't do a very good job of that, but that worked out pretty well. My second session was on PowerShell. That one I did live demos for because I really didn't want to record those because I never know what I'm going to do. I'm always taking questions from the audience, and I'm kind of letting them guide that. And so that session went really well. I felt nervous, though, because Joran gave two of us sessions. He gave Spence a PowerShell session and myself a PowerShell session, and everybody who's ever met Spence or or whatever knows that Spence is smarter than me. So I kind of hoped we would have my PowerShell session on day 1 and then Spence's on day 2, but they ended up getting, because of schedules, they ended up getting swapped back and forth. So I had to follow Spence up, and half to 2/3 of the people that were in the room with me were in Spence's session 2. So that was kind of scary. I hope I didn't embarrass myself. I looked at Spence's notes. Spence and I chatted about it, and so I made sure that we didn't cover the same things. But it's very intimidating to watch somebody who's smarter than you just present the same information that you are. So I want to roll a thing back. Doug is saying in the chat room, people are talking about recording demos and all that. For the demos that I did for Ceph, I absolutely put the audio in the video, and I did that for a couple of reasons. Number one, I knew I wasn't going to be able to cover all 57 minutes of those videos in 60 minutes, clearly. That just wasn't going to happen. So I wanted to make them stand alone if people downloaded them after the fact. The second reason that I did it is because I kind of knew what I was going to say, when I was talking about that. So speaking the part in the video and recording the audio with it helped me time everything, helped me time the mouse clicks and all that. So I did it for that reason too, just get the timing down. But I know a lot of people, don't put the audio in there. So that was just a tip that I did. But I'll probably do more of those. Okay, so that was it. But yeah, the PowerShell thing went well. If you guys want to see the demos and the videos that I did, and again, I didn't put a lot of time into them, but if you go to www.toddklindt.com/SEF2013, excuse me, that's got all the videos that I recorded. Okay, so now on to some actual SharePoint stuff. Had a question come up with a customer this week. They had a weird problem, and it's a problem that I'd seen before, but the problem was that only farm admins could get results in search. So if a regular user went to search and did a search for anything, they got no results. If a farm admin got into there and did a search, they got results. And so I've seen this before, and what this is it's a permissions issue, and it's that whole thing that my friend Eric Harlan says, it's always permissions. But when the content crawler account goes out and crawls content, it looks to see what the ACL is on that content, and then it goes out and looks for that user in AD. And you can get into a couple of situations where the content crawl account can't interrogate the users inside of AD, so it can't verify all the permission stuff. So it errs on the side of caution, and it says, I can't verify the security trimming, so I'm just not going to show you anything. But it assumes that farm administrators, can get into that kind of stuff, so it shows them. So if that ever happens, you get this issue where regular users get no results with search for stuff that has results, but farm admins get results. It's permissions. Specifically, it has to do with the permission of the content crawl account and something. So there's a couple of things that I've seen that lead to this. Number one is if you get an AD team that's really security conscious and they go in and tweak the security settings in Active Directory, this will happen. Out of the box with AD, every AD user can query every other AD user. So the content crawler account can query my account, can query whoever's. And so that's one way. So if you've got somebody who's done that, you just need to make sure that content crawl account can enumerate everything. The other way was they had this customer had a trust, And so there's a thing with trusts and claims that can get things mixed up. And essentially, you just have to go into search a little bit, tweak a claim setting, and then everything falls into place. So just one of those things, I just wanted to mention it. I don't necessarily expect you to remember the fix, but I just want you to remember, I think Todd was talking about this, and then shoot me an email or send me a tweet or something, and I'll point you in the right direction. Another good post that I recently stumbled across is a post that outlines, this is from, I think, a PFE, a Microsoft PFE in the UK, that shows you all the ports that you need between different boxes inside of SharePoint, and so that kind of lets you, the ports and protocols between the different boxes, lets you create your firewall rules better, things like that. And it has a pretty decent image that comes with it. I kind of like that. If you click the picture in there, and I got it here, it's got all your different types of machines. If you click it, it blows up, and you can see the ports and all that kind of stuff. Very good for making sure that firewalls let things in that are supposed to be in, but block things that are supposed to be blocked. I've seen both sides of this be a problem. I've seen people who just have everything open everywhere. And if you're internal, it's probably not a horrible idea, but you start having internet-facing things, you got to start locking that stuff down. But then you see weird things like, you have a web page that managed metadata won't come through on, and that's because the port to the service app is blocked or something like that. So it's just a great little thing. Now, they have a link in here. Microsoft has an official document that says, here's the permissions that you need. And they've got a link to that at the bottom, I think. But this one is just a really good Visio. Got lots of pictures, and I like it. So that's a good one. So here's one. This is a blog post. Speaking of PowerShell, this has been a very PowerShell heavy netcast, and I noticed that the scripting wife, Teresa Wilson, is in the chat room. So hello to Teresa. Thanks for all that you do. We all, when we're writing PowerShell scripts, we have to loop through objects and make decisions about objects. And the commandlet that does that for us in most cases is where object. We can use it to filter out things. I have a hysterical blog post that happened to me a couple years ago as I was learning how to use where object, where I mixed up, I put the equal sign in where I meant -eq, and I renamed all of the databases in SharePoint to SharePoint_config. What I meant to say was loop through all the databases and show me the ones where the name is equal to SharePoint config, and instead what I typed was take all the databases and set their name to SharePoint config. And that was all possible with the power of where object. Now, SharePoint 2013 sits on top of PowerShell v3, and PowerShell v3 has a whole bunch of things that are better in it, but one of them is new options for where object. So when you're using where object with SharePoint 2013 and PowerShell v3, you have the opportunity to rename all your databases the way that I did. They wouldn't want to take that away from you, but there is another way to use where object, and because I'm an idiot, I've decided to start using that way, or I've been using it for a while. So you used to have to do where object and then curly braces and then some kind of code in curly braces, and if that code executed and returned true, then where object did something. If false, it did something else. We don't have to do that anymore. I've got this blog post that that covers that. And so now we can say, we can pipe through, we can do like a get SP database, we can pipe that through our object, but now instead of doing the curly braces in the code that I will inevitably screw up, you can do -property and then the property name, -value and then the thing you're checking for, and then some kind of comparison operator, -eq, -like, -whatever. So it makes that new layout makes it super hard for me to destroy SharePoint. I'm not going to go say impossible because I think I can still figure out a way, but it makes it much more difficult. And the other thing is, it's just a whole lot easier to conceptualize when you're saying where object and -property, -value, -whatever. So I discovered that a while back and have been using that, and just finally decided. I was talking about it last week in Sweden at the SharePoint thing when I did my PowerShell, and somebody in the room was like, "Oh, I could just see the light show up." And so I should probably blog that. So if you're looping through things, looping through site collections, looping through whatever, consider using the new where object. So, yeah, and so Teresa's bringing up a thing in the chat room here. Much like there are SharePoint Saturdays, the PowerShell folks out there have PowerShell Saturdays as well. And so there's a couple of them. There's one in Atlanta and one in Charlotte, which is where Teresa and Ed live. So that's fun. I have not made it to a PowerShell Saturday event. There hasn't been one within 1,000 miles of my house, I don't think. But yeah, it's just a day of PowerShell stuff. And I mentioned, I think last week, the PowerShell Summit that's going to be out in Redmond in April. Sadly, I will not be able to attend. One of my daughter's birthdays is during that conference, but by all means, it sounds like a great time. Okay, so here's another one. This isn't necessarily SharePoint related, but I wanted to bring it up just the same. Tomorrow, we all know what tomorrow is, right? It's the second Tuesday in the month. I know at our house that's Meatloaf Day, so everybody looks forward to that. But it's also Patch Tuesday for Microsoft products. And one of the patches that's going to come out tomorrow at Patch Tuesday is a patch for a 0-day exploit in Internet Explorer. And this is a particularly nasty 0-day exploit that allows them to execute remote code on your box. So we're all afraid of Microsoft patches, and for good reason, goodness sakes. But this one for Internet Explorer, definitely get that on your short list and get that installed, because being a 0-day exploit, that means somebody's already using it. And that's one of those things. The term 0-day means that the bug was found and it was exploited immediately, 0 days after it was discovered. So it's already out there. It's already causing problems. So get that out there. Finally, another Internet Explorer-ish related topic that I want to talk about is, we all know I'm huge fan of my Surface devices. And a couple of days ago, I discovered that when I went to Facebook on my my Surface, normally when you go to Facebook on your Surface RT device, it's just slow. It's just painful. I don't know what it is, but it's very difficult. It just the page just is clumsy and kludgy. So a couple of days ago, a week ago, whatever, I went out to Facebook on my Surface RT to see what people were having for lunch and all that kind of stuff. And the Facebook page was no longer slow. But that's because it was going to the mobile version. And I couldn't not make it go to the mobile version. And that was very frustrating. So what this blog post is, a nice lady named Barb has a blog post on how you can force Facebook to give you the full page on your Surface RT device. And essentially you're just using compatibility mode. So she has you go through, flush all your stuff, and then add Facebook to the ones where you get the compatibility mode. So that was a good one. I can now take my beloved Surface RT device that's sitting right here next to me and keep up with what people are having for lunch, what people's kids are doing, all that kind of stuff, and get the full version. Well, let me wave back at her, Mark. Mark in the chat room's daughter's coming in to say hey, so give a shout out to her. Okay, so those are all of the topics that I had to talk about. I did somebody. So Mark has also had some a little good PowerShell snippet there in the chat room that I liked. The only thing I don't like about that particular snippet of PowerShell, Mark, is that you're using aliases. For get content, you're using GC. I don't approve of aliases. I don't like them. They're very confusing for PowerShell newbies, which after even 4 years now, I consider myself a PowerShell newbie. But other than that, so I'll give your PowerShell there. I'll give it that's a solid B+, A- that you've got there, where you're getting the content and stripping out the UTF-8 stuff. That's good stuff. I like that. I might blog that and steal it for my own. We'll see. Right, so the very last bit we'll talk a little bit. So the big news around the SharePoint world now is the SharePoint conference, and that is in March of 2014 at the Venetian Hotel, Resort, and Casino in beautiful, lovely Las Vegas, Nevada. And I am happy to announce that Shane and I will be doing a pre-conference session on administration of SharePoint 2013. So if you go out to SharePointConference.com, they've got a thing at the top, and you can see those. You can register and get signed up for that. I don't know. I haven't checked today. I should have done that, but they didn't have the prices out there. I don't know what the prices are, but they're normally not free. So hopefully they've got that out there. We'll get that out there soon. They haven't announced who's getting regular breakout sessions yet, so I don't know that. But for sure, I'll be there at the SharePoint conference doing a pre-con. I think every year the SharePoint conference sells out. So if you've got your site set on going to the SharePoint conference, you should sign up sooner rather than later. Doug in the chat room is asking if I've got the content nailed down yet. We really don't, but we're close. Whenever you're doing these kind of things, an interesting thing, so that dovetails into another nice conversation. These kind of events, Tech Ed, SharePoint Conference, and all that, are marketing events. Pure and simple. They're run by Microsoft as marketing. They're marketing. And because of that, they have specific things that they want covered. So a lot of times when you submit sessions or pre-conference sessions, things like that, you'll get some guidance from them as to what you want covered. And so while Shane and I could easily get up and talk for many, many days on SharePoint administration, what we'll end up doing is working with them and finding out what topics they want covered, and that's what we'll do. But yeah, get signed up early. So I think joining the chat room brings up an interesting point. Not only does the SharePoint conference sell out, but the Venetian will sell out as well. So anytime you go to a conference like this, when you stay at the hotel the conference is in, it just makes for a better experience. So yeah, sign up early for nothing, no other reason than to get a seat at the Venetian. Nice place. Stay there. Great folks. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I will also be speaking the next month in April at SP TechCon, and that is April 22nd through the 25th, and it's the spring SP TechCon, and so it is out in San Francisco. So I don't know for sure what all sessions we're doing at that yet, but we've gotten the green light that we're going to be out there. And so if you're in the San Francisco area or just want to go to SP TechCon, go ahead and sign up for that. You can go to sptechcon.com and sign up for that. I don't know if we'll be doing any pre-conferences or post-conferences for that one. Probably not. I think I'd know by now. But would love to see you. SharePoint conference is going to be this big. I mean, the last one was like 10,000 people. SP TechCon is a much cozier conference. It's about 1,000 people. And it's just you get to know people. You get to do things like that. And so consider that one. Sign up for that. So I think that is it. I look at my notes. I'm at the very bottom now, so I'm going to have to stop talking here pretty quick. So thanks to everybody. I see the scripting wife still in the chat room. So that was kind of the theme for tonight was a lot of PowerShell. So as always, I would love to hear your comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at Todd Klindt. You can email me at todd.klindt@rackspace.com. And I know that got good use because one of you guys emailed me when all the links in my blog posts were wrong today. They're like, hey, go ahead and fix those links. So thanks to you hit me up on there. But I'm always up for ideas, things to talk about, things like that. And so this was something. So I didn't bring this up. So I haven't read this. So I'm kind of speaking off cuff here. The PowerShell folks at PowerShell.org, Don Jones and the gang, do PowerShell competitions once a year. And it looks like this year they're going to do 2 of them. So there's going to be a winter scripting games, and they and so they have PowerShell challenges, and you figure out PowerShell to do stuff, and then the code that you write is evaluated. And it looks like they're doing one this winter. And I looked at it a while back, and it looks like they're considering they're going to do a team version. So and Teresa, the scripting wife, suggesting that I put a team together for my chat room. That's not a horrible idea. I know that the guy that won the scripting games, the advanced one, his name's blanking me. I can picture him in my head. Mike F. Robbins. He's been in here before. I would love to have him on my team. He's obviously a very smart guy. But that's something to look into. So I will look into that. Maybe I'll put a team together. That would be fun. So, but everybody else should go to PowerShell.org, read about the scripting games, and should sign up. That would be a good time. So thanks to everybody. You've been great. Chat room, as always, you're a bunch of hooligans. No discipline, no respect, but I love you just the way you are, never change. I will be back here next week on the 14th, and I think it's right around like the 16th was when SharePoint 2013 came out last October, so maybe we'll have a special episode on a year of SharePoint 2013. As always, send me your show ideas. I will get this thing rendered out as quick as I can. But thanks, everybody, and have a good night.